Sakamoto Days is one of the most anticipated anime to come out this year, coming from the mega popular magazine Shonen Jump that has been putting out non-stop banger adaptations in which mainly consisted of a range of shonen action and riveting dramas that come with the standard formula of a serialized weekly manga. It's no big secret that by this point, whenever there comes a new series that stemmed from the magazine, then you know that so many people, even casual anime goers, are gonna keep an eye on the prize. Like last year, we just got two stellar adaptations from the magazine, which namely consisted of Blue Box, which is a high school romance drama that honestly feels like you're watching more of a sports anime, and of course there's Dandadan, which was pretty much the biggest highlight of what anime was like last year. Now, in terms of reasoning as to why that is the case, well, I don't know about you, but I certainly would be worse off with a narrative that consists of many bombastic action scenes between ghosts and aliens, the catchiest anime opening that my shallow ears had to listen to in a long time, or the primary objective of this whole show centering on the goal of getting this kid's balls back. Have I also mentioned that this show is weird as hell? Now, 2024 was a pretty slow year for anime when it comes to making another impact on the general consciousness of us many basement dwellers, although that wouldn't necessarily be the case for Shonen Jump itself. As I'm making this video, there has already been a slew of announcements of many other beloved series confirmed for an adaptation, and to highlight this fact even further, one of these adaptations of these acclaimed series dilutes to one in which I'll mainly be talking about in this video. And yes, as you probably guessed from the title already, it is none other than John Wick if his wife never died and they had a kid and now they live happily ever after in a convenience store. Damn, I'm actually doing pretty well with these light novel titles. Okay, now look, currently as of the making of this video, it has already made its stride out into the world, and by this point there has already been a lukewarm reception towards the show. And as for me, who's already been caught up with the manga, all I can really say to this is that Sakamoto Days is... it's good. With an asterisk. An asterisk the size of Jupiter. Well, it's not the end of the world to point out that whenever anything gets adapted into a different medium, you gotta take a few of these merits that comes with the fidelity of showing not just a new audience, but also to those who are already familiar with the source material. Case in point, One Punch Man, baby! Woo! Yeah! Does everyone remember that show? Yeah! Good times. Now, if you haven't seen the show already, or you did and just ended up forgetting about it for some odd reason, here is a quick recap. So, the series basically takes place in the world where, surprise surprise, superheroes are a thing. Yet it all focuses around a guy who has the crazy ability to beat everyone and everything in, you guessed it, one punch. So, when this anime started making its debut back in 2015, which... oh god, it's already been a decade now. This series pretty much blew everyone's socks off with some of the most balls-to-the-wall animation that has ever been put together into a 12-episode runtime of an anime which, coupled that with its comedic takes on the shonen formula, as well as even the superhero genre, and you got something that is definitely worthwhile to keep in the spotlight for many years to come. Like, for real though, even to this day, OPM Season 1 feels like it was a dream project come true, putting together some of the most well-regarded animators in the industry, while at the same time creating some of the most fluid yet ballistic motions of a moving image that still stands among the most recent shows that comes with the movement known as the Sakuga effect. The crazy thing about this adaptation is that when you compare it to the manga, the results are not too far off either. If you've ever read the manga it was based on, or at least saw one of these panels for your Twitter feed, then you should know that some of these illustrations, if not most of them, are, to put it bluntly, pure art. Like seriously, if I would just show you a panel right now, for example, just like that, you'd see this and your brain would instantaneously be like, holy shit. That was the level of quality that the team for Season 1 was going up against, and the fact that they managed to pull it off speaks for just how much of a commitment they were willing to go for this story. That is, until Season 2 came along. Now, during the production of this series, it was announced that it was going to be handled by a completely different team, which meant One Punch Man would no longer be animated by the folks over at Studio Madhouse, but instead with JC's staff. And here's the main outlying problem with this. That when it comes to a studio's strike record, it's very important to keep acknowledged on what style are they usually good with, do they handle certain shows that made a huge impact with the market, or if they just so happen to be available for pickup on whatever projects they got time to work with. And unfortunately for JC's staff, that was basically the third option, and as a result, OPM Season 2 ended up taking a nosedive in production quality from what it was once like in its first season, that while it didn't drop the ball completely, the difference differences of quality between the two seasons was very noticeable to say the least. And mainly that's always part of the reason why I always tend to keep a lookout on what certain types of anime might be worth watching, not just in value to its story, but also what type it's meant to be presented with and vice versa. Now, the reason I'm establishing all of this is that while despite some anime studios that may not always mesh well together with the type of show they're being brought to work on, JC Staff in particular, while not necessarily a bad studio to work with, they ain't exactly the most proficient when it comes to animating stuff well altogether. Now, why did I just bring all this up when it's about Sakamoto days? Well, here is the threshold. Personally, this series in particular has been my most hotly anticipated anime to come out in a while, thanks to this unforeseen ability of foresight that I have never revealed to anyone else until now, and it is widely known as reading the manga. Now, understandably, as an avid anime fan, I was coming off one series that I predict would get an anime way before announcements get made, and Sakamoto Days is certainly no exception. While it initially starts off slow as a sort of slice of life kind of vibe mixed in with lighthearted jokes that takes a spoof on the whole assassination type story, it wasn't until later down the line when as soon as the stakes started getting higher, so did the illustrations on what sort of action sequences should be presented next. Like, how does one character act in accordance with their own type of fighting style, and how does one battle scene dilute to the next? And while these questions might be replicated a ton in most other shonen stories, that doesn't change the fact that most of the panels that you witness while reading, they go hard as fuck. I wasn't joking when I said that this is a John Wick what if scenario, cause ideally speaking, this is pretty much what John Wick could have went through if he was in that exact same situation. And just like the films beforehand, whenever you start to see a fight scene pop off, oh, it pops off alright. So understandably, many people like myself were ecstatic to see what this series would have been like in an animated format. And right after it was announced that it was coming, it wouldn't be long for us to see what our favorite store clerk manager / ex-assassin would look like on the big screen. And by the time the first trailer kicked around, the reception was a bit controversial? You see, during the details showcased in the trailer, it was announced that the adaptation was going to be handled by TMS Entertainment, which by all means is a pretty decent studio, as some of their most well-received shows consist of Dr. Stone, the Fruits Basket remake, and all things considered, TMS was overall not a terrible decision to pick when it comes to being commissioned what certain anime should get adapted by, but here's the dilemma with this. Well, despite having a decent track record, TMS isn't really well known for adapting series that is purely centered around action, and as a result, when your repertoire is being given a show to work with by which those main attribute as to what makes it so good to begin with is its said action, then you can imagine how hard of a time it would be like for the animators who work there, whilst being offset by the fact that it comes from arguably the most popular manga magazine in the world. So yeah, they're clearly not prepped for this type of work. So, with the show already being halfway done, what does the overall rating say about Sakamoto Days? Well, they're not bad, actually. Like, throughout its first couple of weeks, it did manage to be rated highly on Netflix on a consistent basis, so that's at least saying something about how the show is generally being felt towards by other people. Heck, when you even watch the show itself, it's nothing to scoff at visually per se, but it overall serves the purpose that most anime fans would tend to expect from your typical Shonen Jump title. So overall, despite my complaints about what could have been, at the end of the day, it's still a pretty solid show. However, there is still a slight misconception within the community, or more specifically the manga readers, including me, that has been dwelling on the reputation of what Sakamoto Days is all about, with some claiming that this could have been the next big thing after the likes of, let's say, Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer. Although, there is one thing that I do want to point out, and hence clear some things a bit with those types of people, namely being that the beginning of Sakamoto Days kinda starts off slow. Like, it was initially meant to be played off as a lighthearted slice-of-life-esque kind of show about a retired assassin who's now living the family life, and understandably, there weren't really any high stakes in the matter, especially since our main character can still whoop your ass to high caliber. At least, not until the middle chapters where things start to really kick into high gear. Yet with all the hype surrounding the anime, I can't help but feel like we've been taken for granted for how whenever a hugely successful manga that's getting an anime, it feels like nowadays we're just getting spoiled for choice. And mind you, I'm only referring to the mainstream type shit, cause boy you know how much anime has been coming out these days. And to top it off, when a series in general has already grown a massive fanbase where to the point there comes in a loud minority of people that just likes to complain about everything that went wrong when dissecting an adaptation, then you can imagine just how hard it is to please everyone who is looking forward to your show, and that's not even commenting on the drastic state of the anime industry right now. But then again, does this really justify the leading result of Sakamoto Days in an anime format? Well, that's up for you to decide. Personally, I am enjoying my time with the show, even despite being already caught up with the manga, but at the same time, I just can't help but feel as if there is something missing every time I watch an episode. Now, deliberately speaking, it's all about the little details that, to me, really elevates the creative process that has been put into an adaptation that not only gives credit to the source material, but is willing enough to stand alone on its own 2 feet. Now, just let me put on my analytical glasses there for a second. Just take a look at Chainsaw Man, for example. And before you're wondering, yes, I did already talk about this show before, don't at me. Now, one of the most memorable scenes to me is when you start to set up a scene in the middle of a somewhat empty apartment. Then you see a guy just getting up in the morning, having a cup of coffee, and just overall be chilling on his balcony. And that alone can tell us a whole lot about this character, as this eventfully depicts a person whose minimalist approach in life serves as a depiction in which that he doesn't partake in any sort of leisurely activity, which as a result perfectly aligns with his character throughout the entire series. And just look at the way the entire sequence has been carried out. It's like it's just vibes, man. And the best thing about it is that it's not even part of the manga. Like, this is straight up an anime original scene, which really goes to show what both the credibility and the vision of what these animators were willing to go for, displaying a case of how life is always a series of ups and downs, whether you're hanging out with your friends, or just going all Texas Chainsaw Massacre style on an eldritch being. Yet, with Sakamoto Days on the other hand, when you compare the two together, the difference is night and day. Sure, well, there are a couple of scenes that look well animated, but that's just about it. It's just good. And I think that is a dilemma we are currently in right now. Look, I've been watching anime for a long time now. Back then, when I was in my early years of secondary school, I would have never imagined myself as someone who wants to talk about anime for a living. It's still a pipe dream, sure, but hey, at least I'm trying. And while I could go on and on about the discrepancies of the anime not ending up being what most people were expecting it to, I digress on that fact, because right now I'm feeling kinda skeptical about the current state that anime is in right now. Not that I'm feeling jaded or burnt out, it's just a matter of what choices do I have to comply with what I want to do with my life. While I still do enjoy making videos every now and then, there are times where I just often procrastinate and end up leaving stuff at the last minute. And I know that's not a healthy habit, but hey, at least I'm not the only one. So, where exactly am I going with this? Well, this is mainly something that I've been wanting to say for a long time now, being that whenever something comes along and gets everyone's attention so quickly that it ends up being one of the most debated topics in a long time, eventually there's going to be a time where it will inevitably fade from the public consciousness, and in the world where everything comes and goes more often than not, it generally feels like I'm in an out-of-control homeostasis where everyone is always looking for the next and new shiny gem, and I just don't think that's a healthy mindset nowadays. Is it merely because of streaming? Yes, but that just goes back to the whole climate of what the main public perception would want for entertainment nowadays. And in a post-capitalist world, it's gonna take a long-ass time until something pivotal happens within our brain cells and figure out what to do next. Probably spitballing here, but I think it's time that me, you watching this, as well as potentially hundreds of people who like to invest in their hobbies, to go and take a look in the mirror and think back to why you enjoy this thing so goddamn much that it nearly becomes a life transcendence. And you know what? I think it's about time to anyway. So now the remaining question is this: where do we go from here? I mean, in terms of the anime, it's already going to wrap up its first batch of episodes in a couple of weeks, unless you've watched this by the time it already has. And so far, while it hasn't made any sudden strides within the anime community, it's still a beloved series, and even if it did meet my own expectations at the start, I'd still highly recommend checking out the manga because whoo boy! Yeah, we are definitely eating good with this one, at least when it comes to the art and everything else panel-wise. But if you're still struggling to decide which particular medium is better for you, I would still suggest you to watch the anime as well, albeit with some nitpicks here and there. Because no matter what life stage you are at currently, no matter how difficult it may feel to keep on living, just know that whenever you're in trouble, you can always rely on good old Sakamoto. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I didn't know it was going to transition this way, but hey, if you managed to watch this video all the way to the end, be sure to give it a like, comment, and subscribe.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Is anyone going to get him off the stage, or...